Arizona Territory. 1878. The wind blew hot enough to strip the skin from bone, and the shack looked like it would fall apart if a man leaned too hard on the door. Edda Calloway stood inside it, barefoot on split floorboards, her wedding dress already stained with dust and sweat. She had not eaten since yesterday morning and had not seen a soul since her new husband rode off, saying he would fetch water and supplies. That was 3 days ago. He had not come back. Her fingers trembled as she poured the last of the tepid water into a cup. The shack had one cot, one cracked window, and a door that did not shut right. The sun outside was a hammer, and she was alone. She had been married for less than a week. Back in Tombstone, her father had arranged the match. The man Samuel Kit had seemed decent enough. Older, with a wiry frame and steady eyes. He owned a few heads of cattle and had land near the Dragoon Mountains. He said he wanted a wife, and her father wanted her gone. Edda had not cried when Samuel took her out beyond the edge of town. She had not cried when he showed her the shack and said it would be just for a time. She had not cried when he climbed on his horse and rode off with both canteens and the rifle. But now she did. She sat on the cot and let the tears fall. Her throat hurt from thirst. Her hands hurt from clawing at the door frame every time she thought she heard hooves. But no one came. Until they did. The sound was low at first, just the faint rhythm of a horse crossing dry dirt. Then louder. A whistle followed. Not a tune, just a single, sharp note. Edda stood up too fast and nearly fainted. Through the crooked window she saw him. A man on horseback, tall in the saddle, wearing a black hat pulled low. Dust coated his shoulders. A rifle hung from his saddle and a pistol rested at his hip. His horse was lean and sweating but still moving strong. He stopped 10 feet from the shack, dismounted, and took off his hat. "Ma'am?" His voice was rough but not unkind. "You all right in there?" She opened the door but did not step out. "Who are you?" "Name's Eliah Mercer." He looked her over, eyes steady. "You married to Samuel Kit?" Her hands clenched the doorframe. "I was. He left me here. Days ago." Eliah's jaw shifted. "I figured as much. Found his body yesterday in a wash near Bisbee. Shot in the back. Robbed. He was bragging about his new bride and a parcel of land. I followed his tracks here." Edda blinked. Her knees nearly gave out. "He is dead." "Yes, ma'am. I am sorry." She did not speak. A strange mix of grief and relief swirled in her chest. She barely knew Samuel, but he had taken her out here with promises, and then vanished. She felt foolish. Used. Eliah looked at her again, steadier now. "This ain't a place for anyone to be left." "You got food?" "No, water." "Gone." He nodded once, pulled a canteen from his saddlebag, and handed it to her. She drank carefully, her hands shaking. "I need to get you out of here," he said after a moment. Edda hesitated. "Why would you help me?" He looked away, then back. "Because I know what it is to be left behind. And because I paid the man double what he asked for to keep you safe just yesterday morning. He promised he would. Then he rode off and bled out in the dirt. That does not sit right with me." Her mouth parted. "You paid him?" "Yes. I paid double to make sure you would not be harmed. He said he would take care of you until I got back. He lied. You were coming here? Was heading this way to check on you myself. Was not planning to find you half-starved and stranded." Edda wrapped her arms around herself. "I do not know what to say. You do not need to say anything. Just come with me." "Where?" "I got a place west of here. Not much, but it is real shelter. I will get you to town after that if you want. Or wherever you need to go." Edda studied him. His eyes were pale gray, steady, honest. His hands looked like they had worked hard. There was no ring on his finger. He did not look away when she met his gaze. She whispered, "I do not have anywhere to go." "Then you come with me," he said, quiet but firm. She nodded. He helped her onto his horse, then climbed up behind her, steadying her with one arm. They rode through the heat and the silence, the desert white around them. Eliah did not talk much. He gave her water when she needed it, adjusted her veil when it tangled in the wind, made sure she did not fall asleep in the saddle. By nightfall, they reached a small cabin tucked near a dry creek bed. It was not fancy, but it had walls that held and a door that locked. He helped her down, led her inside, and gave her a clean blanket. "You can have the bed," he said. "I will take the floor." "You do not have to." "I do," he said, not unkindly. She watched him build a small fire, make coffee, and slice dried meat. She ate slowly, her stomach unsure. Later, wrapped in the blanket, she watched the firelight flicker on the walls. Elias sat across from her, leaning back against the far wall, arms crossed. "Why did you really come?" she asked. He looked up. "Because I made a promise. And because when I heard he left a young bride alone out there, something inside me got real cold. I could not let it lie." She nodded slowly. "Thank you." He met her eyes. "You are safe now." And for the first time in days, Edda believed it. In the days that followed, Edda learned how to move slowly again, how to breathe without fear riding her shoulders. The cabin sat low beneath a rise of rock, shaded near midday by a wind-warped mesquite. There was a lean-to out back with spare tack, and a creeked downhill that sometimes held water if the sky had been kind the week before. Mostly it was dry. Still, she was grateful for the sound of wind through brush and the weight of wood walls around her. Eliah kept to his own rhythm. He left each morning before the sun rose full, returning with whatever he had hunted or traded for. He spoke little, but not out of coldness. His silences felt like space, not distance. A man who'd learned that words mattered more when few. That fourth morning, after she'd swept the cabin floor and folded the spare blanket, she stepped outside and found him oiling the hinge on the front gate. "You always fix things that don't belong to you?" she asked. He didn't look up. "I built the damn gate. Just didn't hang it right the first time." "You built this place?" "I did." She sat on the porch rail, careful not to catch her dress hem on the nail head near the post. "Why?" He paused, setting the oil can down. "Because I needed somewhere quiet after the war. And this land was too rocky for cattle, too far from town for trouble." She watched the way he moved, calculated but unhurried. "You been alone since then?" His answer came slow. "I was married once. She died before I finished building the roof." Edda didn't speak. The wind shifted, tugging a strand of hair across her cheek. He wiped his hands on a cloth, then tucked it into his back pocket. "I don't say that to lay sorrow on you. Just figured if we're sharing walls, you ought to know. I wasn't expecting to be anyone's burden," she said, quieter. "You're not." She looked at the horizon, where the heat shimmered off the rocks like smoke. "Is there someone I should write to? About Samuel?" No kin listed in the marshal's records. Just his name and a claim that never got properly filed. "So he brought me to land he didn't even own. Looks that way." She pulled her knees up and wrapped her arms around them. "He told me he bought cattle. Said they'd be delivered after the rains. They weren't." She gave a bitter nod, then stood. "I don't want to stay idle. If I'm here, I should earn my keep." Eliah didn't argue. "You know how to card wool or tan hide? I can sew, mend, cook if there's flour. I cleaned for a boarding house once, back in Prescott." He lifted an eyebrow. "You ever ride?" "Not much." "Then we'll start with that." She blinked. "You're offering to teach me? You said you didn't want to be idle." That afternoon, he saddled the smaller of two horses, a calm bay with a white mark on his forehead, and showed her how to mount without pulling the poor beast sideways. She laughed once, accidentally, when her foot missed the stirrup and she landed in the dust. He offered her a hand without smiling, but his eyes softened. "Try again," he said. By dusk, she'd managed to stay in the saddle long enough to circle the cabin twice. Afterward, they sat beneath the mesquite, sharing what was left of the smoked rabbit he'd brought in earlier. The fire was low, just enough to keep snakes off. She watched him break bread into neat pieces, his fingers careful. "What made you pay Samuel to keep me safe?" she asked, not for the first time, but with a different weight behind it now. His gaze held the firelight. "I needed a partner to help run a freight run south. He mentioned he'd just married, said you were young and steady. Promised me he'd keep you safe till I circled back. Made it sound like you were part of some plan he had. And you believed him. I wanted to. She tilted her head. And now? I don't believe a thing he said anymore. But I meant what I paid for. You deserve better than being left in a ruin without water. She studied him, quiet. You said you lost your wife. What was she like? Eliah hesitated. Stubborn. Smarter than me. She could find water in places I wouldn't bother digging. Used to braid her hair with wildflowers when she was angry. I don't think I've ever been angry in a way that let me braid anything. He looked at her then, really looked. You've got more strength than you know. It takes a different kind of courage to survive being left. She turned her face toward the fire. I thought I'd feel ashamed. But mostly I just feel tired. You don't have to earn the right to be here, Edda. You already did. She didn't answer, but when she stood to go inside, she left the door unlatched behind her. He followed later, silent as dusk itself, and laid his bedroll by the hearth without a word. That night, she dreamed of horses running across open ground, and woke with the scent of mesquite smoke woven into her hair. By the 6th day, Edda had found herself waking before the sun. The light crept in pale and cold through the window slats, and she'd lie still, listening to the first sounds outside Eliah chopping wood. The faint snort of a restless horse, the wind tugging at the eaves. She'd never known quiet could feel full. That morning she stepped into the yard with a tin basin tucked under one arm. Her arms had begun to freckle from sun exposure, and the backs of her hands were dry, but her movements held more confidence. She crouched beneath the rain barrel and filled the basin halfway, careful not to waste a drop. Eliah approached from the far edge of the clearing, a coil of fencing wire slung across one shoulder. There's a trader passing through the canyon trail today, he said. He's got flour, maybe coffee. Thought I'd ride out and see what his prices are. She dipped a cloth in the basin and wrung it out. You'll be gone long? Not more than half the day. She hesitated. Could I come? Eliah paused. It's a hard ride with little shade. I can manage it. He studied her a moment, then gave a short nod. Saddle the bay. I'll ready the packs. The trail east cut between low hills and dry brush, with stretches of shallow sand that slowed their pace. Edda sat straighter in the saddle than she had before, her skirts tucked up enough to keep from catching, her eyes scanning the terrain without needing to be told. They came across the trader near a split in the trail where flat stone served as a natural place to rest. He was older, with a sun-leathered face and a wagon that creaked under burlap sacks, coils of rope, and bundles of dried herbs. Mercer, the man greeted. Didn't expect you out this way so soon. Didn't expect much company lately, Eliah replied, dismounting. Edda stayed seated, watching the exchange. The trader's eyes flicked to her, then returned to Eliah. You keeping house now? Something like that. The man grunted, then gestured to the wagon bed. Goods are dear this week. Storms washed out the pass near Fort Bowie. Supplies slow. Eliah sorted through the sacks. What's fair for a pound of flour and a tin of beans? 2 bits for the flour. More if you want the beans sealed. Edda swung down from the saddle, brushing dust from her hem. What about salt? The trader's eyebrows lifted at her question. You from the east? Prescott. That's east enough. Salt's a luxury out here. I can sew, she said. Trade you a shirt mended proper for a pouch of salt. The man considered. You sew clean? Yes. He reached behind him and pulled out a cotton shirt with a torn sleeve and a broken collar thread. Mend this and the salt's yours. She took the shirt, examining the damage. Give me until you're ready to move on. Eliah watched her work from beneath the shade of a palo verde. She sat cross-legged on a flat stone, needle flashing in the sun, her brows drawn in concentration. When she finished, the stitches were even, the fabric smooth. The trader handed her a small linen pouch in exchange, and she tucked it carefully into her pack. On the ride back, they didn't speak much. The wind had picked up and clouds gathered low to the north, promising nothing but heat. You bargained well, Eliah said as they neared the cabin. I've had practice making do. He looked over. You always this calm when things turn? She considered. No. But panic doesn't get the salt. He exhaled, a sound caught between amusement and respect. You're not who I expected. Who did you expect? He didn't answer right away. Someone needing rescue. Edda guided her horse around a patch of thornbrush. Maybe I did. Doesn't mean I'll stay needing it. That evening, the wind shifted cooler and they ate in the yard, plates balanced on their knees. Eliah had found a clutch of quail earlier and roasted them with wild onion. As the sky darkened, she leaned back on her elbows, watching stars begin to press through the dusk. You ever think about leaving this place? She asked. Not in a while. Why not? He picked a bit of char from his plate. I built it with my own hands. Buried someone here. That makes a place feel like it belongs to you. She was quiet a long moment. If I left, would you come with me? His head turned. Are you asking to leave? No. Just wondering if you'd follow. His gaze didn't waver. Depends. Would you want me to? She met his eyes. Yes. He nodded once, slow. Then I would. The fire burned low. Night settled in full, and the hush between them was no longer empty. Felt like something waiting to bloom. The rain came without warning. They were mending the paddock fence when the wind shifted, curling in sharp from the south. The sky over the ridgeline turned the color of bruised tin. Eliah set his hammer down and looked up once, then walked toward the cabin. We'll finish this later, he said, tone clipped. Storm's coming fast. Edda followed him in, wiping her palms on her apron as the first drops hit the roof like scattered pebbles. By the time she latched the door, the downpour had swallowed everything beyond the yard. Thunder rolled low and steady, not close yet, but full of promise. Inside, the air felt close. A single oil lamp lit the room, casting long shadows on the walls. Eliah set a kettle on the stove and pulled off his wet shirt, hanging it near the hearth. You ever see rain like this in Prescott? He asked, glancing toward the window. Only once, she said, settling onto the bench beside the table. It flooded the post road for 2 days. My father said it was God trying to wash the sins off the territory. Eliah gave a low sound, something like agreement, and stirred the coals. The warmth crept back in slow, the kind that didn't ask permission. You think it'll flood down here? She asked. Not likely. Ground's too hard. It'll run before it soaks. She watched him crouch near the stove, the muscles in his back catching firelight with each movement. She hadn't meant to stare, but she didn't look away either. I used to think storms were nothing but trouble, she said after a while. But this one makes the land feel alive. He looked over his shoulder. You learning to see things different? I think I have to. He stood, wiping his hands. You're not just surviving anymore. That struck something deep, but she didn't answer. Instead, she rose, crossed to the cupboard, and took down a cracked deck of cards she'd found days ago while sweeping. You know poker? She asked. Better than I should, he said, tugging on a dry shirt. Then teach me. They sat across from one another at the table, the cards worn soft from years of use. He explained the hands, the betting, the way people gave themselves away without meaning to. She listened, asked questions, lost 3 rounds in a row before laying down a full house with a grin that warmed her cheeks. You bluff better than I expected, he said, shuffling the deck again. I watched my father lie to debtors for years. I learned something. He dealt another hand, slower this time. Rain tapped steady on the roof. The fire popped behind them. You ever think about what you want now? He asked, eyes on his cards. I haven't had time to want anything, she said. But I'd like to wake up and know the day belongs to me. He nodded once. That's worth wanting. She set her cards down. What about you? He didn't answer right away. Then, I want to build something that don't fall apart when the wind changes. Their eyes met across the table. Neither looked away. Later, she dried the dishes while he mended the strap on his saddlebag. The storm had passed, leaving the air cool and clean, the scent of wet earth drifting in through the open window. Edda, he said quietly, not looking up. When I first paid that man, I thought I was buying peace of mind. Making sure a stranger didn't get swallowed by this place. But I wasn't thinking straight. I didn't see what I was really doing. She turned, towel still in her hand. And what was that? looking for something to tether myself to. She stepped closer. You don't owe me more than you've already done. That's not what I mean. He stood close enough now that she could see the lines at the corners of his eyes, the way his jaw tensed when he held back what mattered. I know you didn't come here by choice, he said. But if you ever decide to stay because you want to, not because you're stuck, I'd be glad for it. She didn't speak, but her breath caught just once. Then she reached for his hand. Not tentative, not uncertain. Just sure. I'm not stuck, she said, and he understood what she meant. The morning after the rain, the earth held a softness that hadn't been there before. Patches of green had begun to push through the dust near the base of the fence posts, and a scent hung in the air, clean and rooted. Edda stepped outside with a bucket in hand, the sky pale and wide above her, and paused when she saw Eliah kneeling at the edge of the yard, pulling up a length of buried wire. What is it? She asked. He dusted his hands, standing. Old line from when I tried to run a telegraph out this way. Gave up before it reached town. Useless now. She tilted her head. You tried to connect this place? Once. Thought I needed to hear from the world. Turns out I didn't. She set the bucket down beside the well. You think maybe now you'd want to try again? Eliah looked at her for a long moment, then said, not unless you want to write someone. I've no one left to write, she said simply, and began to draw water. That day, they worked side by side. She chopped onions while he salted venison. When the sun set high, he showed her how to trim the hoof of the bay mare, his hands guiding hers with quiet care. There was no need to speak much. The rhythm of shared labor spoke enough. In the late afternoon, he brought her a crate from the storage lean-to. Inside were bolts of canvas, a half-used spool of red thread, a tin of buttons, and a pair of scissors dulled at the points. Figured you might make use of these, he said. She ran her fingers over the fabric. Where'd you get all this? Bartered a few winters back. Was going to fix up the saddlebags. Never got around to it. Edda knelt beside the crate and studied the material. I can make curtains. Maybe a new apron if there's enough. He crouched beside her. Make what you like. It's yours now. That night, they sat on the porch. The air was mild and the last of the storm clouds had drifted north, leaving stars behind. A coyote called in the distance, thin and lonesome. You ever think about marrying again? Edda asked, her voice quiet, not pressing. He didn't answer right away. Then I did. Once I stopped thinking I didn't deserve it. She looked over. Why would you think that? I lived through things most men didn't. Lost people. Made choices I can't take back. For a long time, I thought surviving meant I'd used up whatever good was meant for me. You haven't, she said, her voice certain. His breath caught in that space between disbelief and hope. I don't want to go back to town, she said. Not now. Not ever. He turned toward her fully. You sure? I've never been more. Eliah stood, then held out his hand. Come with me. She took it. He led her to the small barn where the horses shifted gently in their stalls. From a rafter beam, he pulled down a wooden box. Inside was a ring, plain and sturdy, its silver dulled but unmarred. I was going to trade this once, he said. Didn't. Couldn't say why. Edda took the ring, turned it between her fingers. It's heavy. Only if it's worn for the wrong reasons. She met his gaze. Then it won't be. He stepped closer. You'd marry me? Here, now? Nothing grand? There's nothing more I'd want than this. He took the ring, slid it onto her finger, his hand steady. She leaned into him, forehead against his chest. I never thought I'd find something like this. Not after the way I left Prescott. Not after being left behind. You weren't left behind, he said, wrapping his arms around her. You were just waiting to be found. They stood there until the wind cooled the sweat off their skin and the horses settled back to sleep. The next morning, he hitched the wagon and they rode west into Bisbee to file the marriage proper and trade for seed. The clerk raised an eyebrow when Edda gave her name, but didn't ask questions. They signed the register, bought a bag of corn and a tin of coffee, and left before the sun hit its peak. Back at the cabin, Edda planted a row of sweetgrass along the southern wall. Eliah repaired the roof beam that had begun to bow with last year's dry winter. They laid a new rug across the floor, pieced from scraps of old shirts and wool, and hung her curtains with twine and patience. One night, as summer settled in for good, she stood barefoot in the doorway watching the moon rise. Eliah came up behind her, arms around her waist. "You ever think about children?" she asked. He rested his chin on her shoulder. "I do. You. I think I'd like to raise them somewhere quiet. Somewhere honest." He pressed a kiss to her temple. "Then we will." And they did. Years passed slow and full. The cabin grew, room by room. A cradle was built by hand. The horses grew older and new ones took their place. The land didn't always give easy, but it gave enough. And every night, no matter what the day brought, he lit the lamp and she set the table and they sat across from one another with a quiet kind of joy. They never spoke of the man who'd left her in the desert. Some things didn't need the weight of words. What they had built together made him nothing but a shadow on the trail behind them. And when neighbors passed through, they always said the same thing about the house near the mesquite grove. That it felt like peace, plain and true. Because it was.